To understand why they are putting barbiturates and other substances into things that I consume, one must understand the history of covert drugging and how it is aimed, for the most part, at black activists, some of whom have Jewish financial backing, and some of whom are uncontrolled opposition, such as myself. Well, it goes back to the culture wars. Okay, as I was watching the E. Michael Jones interview, the interview guy said that basically you control the culture and the political control falls into your lap. So, leading up to World War II, Hitler was complaining about the culture of Germany, the sexual revolution, and this comes as a result of partially of mental health professionals such as Wilhelm Reich, who wrote several books, including The Mass Psychology of Fascism in 1933, mind you, and The Sexual Revolution in 1936. Remember, World War II was from 1939 to 1945. So, leading up to World War II, there was the famous kind of disagreements and political rivalry between the fascists or the National Socialists and the Communist parties. Okay? And the Communist parties, as I'm sure a lot of you are starting to understand now, came from largely from the Jews. Okay, so we look at Trotsky and you look at the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks and you look into the history and the different factions of communism and you truly understand what it's about and where it comes from. It's pretty self-evident there that this is a battle between the Jews, some of whom are atheists, who have been arguing with the Catholic Church since its inception. And it was continued, this battle against Christian morality and any established Christian religion that seeks to control the culture and the enemies of Christian morality. This was continued not only by the pagans and the atheists and the early scientists, if you will, but by the Protestants, around 500 years ago. And then, the communists, as a result of the atheist factions of the Jews and their allies. I mean, to put it in a nutshell, to simplify it. I mean, there's more to it than that, but that's the meat of it. So Wilhelm Reich was an Austrian psychoanalyst. He can be categorized under Freud, and he's been called one of the most radical figures in the history of psychiatry. Okay, so a lot of people don't know about how these pseudosciences and these applications of occult pseudosciences and occult speculation, speculative masonry, and so on came about. They don't understand simple ideas such as psychology was a branch, of philosophy that materialized, so to speak, and created these horrendous waves of speculation into the root cause of human behavior. When the nature and nurture debate hasn't been settled, we are drugging people, and you have a long history of drugs being used. Drugs and poisoning go way back in history, so it is not only feasible but really mainstream history. If you really do your due diligence, you'll find that that the black population has been drugged and dumbed down for a long time, especially. They've been referred to as the Negro problem. People have written books such as The Passing of the Great Race and so on to try to keep these people in check. What do you think urban renewal is? Gentrification. These things have been called genocide by researchers like E. Michael Jones. This is ethnic genocide. Okay, so as these people are drugging me, the whole time I was reaching out, saying, look at the different applications of these drugs. One of the applications, when it makes me my eyes sensitive to sunlight, is the cops can use those bright lights they have, you know, to stun me more effectively. And there's a lot of, and they could also use it to irritate and to provoke. And law enforcement has a long history of torturing inmates. And, you know, there used to be the whipping post, and they used to use electroshock therapy comes from old torture techniques that they use with basic batteries, I'm told. And so when you look at the history of law enforcement provoking the black community, you know, to keep us divided because they're afraid of what's going to happen if we get together, you know, I mean, it's pretty much, you'd be a fool to come to the conclusion that, hey, this guy's fucking crazy or something. The more logical thing to assume when you look at my videos and listen to what's going on is that, yes, this is going on. And they're trying to create a society where you're dumb enough to automatically assume that a black activist in these times that we live in, where unarmed black people are being shot down by police, with over 4,000 videos, who has 15 witnesses and proof of a hate crime on the wall, has the cops on record, you know, ignoring that hate crime, you know, kind of antagonizing me. And again, those were some of the cops who weren't as bad as the other ones, you know. I mean, they want you to believe that all this means nothing, and that the logical thing to assume, and the socially normative thing to assume, is that this guy's delusional. I mean, how fucking crazy, you know, do they think the average person is, you know, right? It's really, they think you're a fucking coward, is really what it is when you truly break this thing down. They're like, look, we've been screening out warriors for generations with all these wars we've been having. We've been using psychology to try to bring them out and bring them to the battlefield and get them killed, you know. And while they're gone, we've been teaching their children to be pussies, so the next generation, even if they have those genes, you know, we control the environment and the media and their perceptions of things and what is considered an acceptable public perception. You know, we control the public information agencies, and we have a monopoly on the dissemination of information and how it can be properly disseminated and properly analyzed, as opposed to someone who isn't considered a valid source or resource. Speaking of resource and human resources, that's what secret societies are for, to create more sources, to resource their propaganda by creating societies that value intellect over superstition, which create people that are perhaps more likely and more fit for college, you know, to go to college, and more fit for college life. So then when they get there, you know, they are completely biased, completely programmed, you know, and reared and prepped, you know, and conditioned to continue to propagate the despicable falsehoods and the false conceptions, the misconceptions that they've had their whole life. And they continue to look at things from that perspective, and they're in denial, really, you know. It's just like the denial of all these cowardly cowards, you know, who know damn well that I would murder them in a fraction of a second. I mean, just imagine the cowardice of, say, a white racist cop or something, right? That knows that this guy would murder you in a fraction of a fucking second. The only chance you would have is to have a vest, have a gun, hide behind your car, and hope he's disarmed, you know? I mean, this guy's more of a man than you. And for 8 years, he's rubbed it in, you know? His philosophy is superior. You know, his lifestyle shows bravery, courage, virtue, and a noble soul. You know, so imagine these pussy-ass, bitch-ass motherfuckers, these sickly-looking, Masonic fucking pigs, and their house nigga allies in the black community with their excuses. You know, these petty ghetto motherfuckers, right, who've been given money, and they're petty with it. That's one of the adverse effects of, you know, this new found black intellectual class that's rooted in the ghetto, right? Not that it would be much different if they were rooted in some bourgeoisie community, you know, but is you have this petty ghetto mentality, It's like, yes, we're dead wrong. You know, so what? And you also get this petty mentality of, oh, I knew that before you. Yeah, because you sucked a goat dick in a secret society. And, you know, when you're the perpetrator, it doesn't make you smarter than the person who figures out what you're doing. You know? When you know the same thing they know. You're the motherfucker doing it. You know? I mean, their logic is insane. You know, they're fucking stupid. They're fucking cowards. And they come from an ignoble background. And that means that you have to now prove yourselves. And they've only proven themselves to be petty, little bitch-ass motherfuckers. Instead of honorable men. You know? When you rise up from the ghetto on the shoulders of demons and devils, you're just a bitch. Every last bum is above you.